Hello, this is Stephen Nojiri, and this is another Tada Genji tradition video. This is a request video, and as some of the viewers are aware, request videos are not part of the normal sequence of videos. They're not numbered, and they're not part of a mini-series, but they do add information to the overall narrative, and they also give me a chance to answer some questions that I've received. So this video was initially requested by one of the viewers, and that viewer was asking about clarification regarding samurai clans, the meaning of the clan, does the samurai clan include the retainers, etc., etc., etc. And this is not actually a very simple answer. It's quite a convoluted answer because the problem is in terminology and in translation. And we'll get to that shortly. But also, soon after that request, I also received a request from sort of a YouTube group that concerns itself with samurai history. Some of you viewers are aware of this YouTube group. On the next slide, I'm going to discuss that just a little bit more. But this group also is, this month, is making videos about misconceptions of the samurai. So this is actually an opportunity to answer that viewer's question and also address two misconceptions of the samurai, primarily the one misconception around the concept of a samurai clan, but we'll also get into one more brief misconception near the end of the video. So, as such, I've decided to put these two requests from the viewer and from this YouTube group together to address this topic of samurai clan and how it actually is a misconception. So if you look at the picture on your screen, these are the other channels that are involved in the YouTube group. Every month a topic is picked, and each channel will address that topic as they see fit. Whatever is represented in one channel isn't representative of the views or beliefs held by the other members of the group. It's just a good opportunity for a single topic to be hit from multiple directions. So there will be links to their channels in the description, and if you feel such inclined, go check them out. If not, that's fine too. So let's dive straight into this. What is a samurai clan? And it seems like a very simple question. Almost everybody's like, oh, I know, right away. Most people say samurai clan, but actually it's a very difficult question to answer. The problem with this is most people's knee-jerk reaction when they say samurai clan, they just say, oh, it's a group of samurai serving a lord. There's a generic amorphous concept of a group of samurai sitting around in armor with somebody in charge, something along those lines. It's actually, a lot of people instantly have this mental image come to mind, but when you really ask, well, no, what is it? Then you run into some problems. And honestly, researchers, translators, and historians all use the English word clan as a generic catch-all term. But what we have to do is look into the actual terms used, because it's actually more complicated. You'll see that almost everything gets translated as clan. Different things that mean different words that mean different things all just get loosely translated as clan, and it's created this amorphous, this very muddy, overly generalized idea of what samurai clan is. So, or to be blunt, there isn't really an actual term for the quote-unquote samurai clan in the way that most people imagine the term or utilize the term. The reality, the actual history, and the actual linguistic reality is more diverse and it's more complicated. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first one up, you'll see the kanji on the screen. This term is almost always translated as clan, right? But it's better to understand it as the English word bloodline or kinship line. So for example, Genji clan, you see the two kanji, was the Genji clan, right? It's loosely translated as Genji clan, but what it actually means is those of Genji bloodline, those of Genji kinship. So that's the big thing. When you hear this translated as clan, you really have to understand bloodline, kinship. It's not a random group of samurai fighting for a lord. That's not the term. This term specifically is kinship. And in modern day settings, it's generally translated as surname or last name, right? Your family name. The next term that you see, this is translated often as well as clan, but this is also not really, it's overgeneralized. It refers to a tribe or a tribal kinship association. It's another kinship term. It doesn't match the concept of samurai clan that most people have. The term, this term is also the root of shizoku, and shizoku means families that are of a samurai genealogy or a person who has samurai ancestors. So, for example, this term used to be a legal term, and it meant that you were legally identified as a person with samurai ancestors, and it came with legal benefits. But after the 1947 Constitution, its legal reality just was basically overlooked, unaddressed. The Constitution is silent on the term, so therefore it just sort of disappears. And now it has gone back to serving as a social and a kinship term. Okay, so those two terms, which are almost always loosely translated as clan, are actually genealogy terms, kinship terms, bloodline terms. And they're referring not to a group of samurai amassed, but to the bloodline, to the family kinship lines. So let's look at some non-kinship terms. So you see the first term up there? No, this is not the term you're looking for. It actually refers to gangs and crews of workers, bunch of rough guys teamed up to do crimes, or you know what I mean, or not always crimes, but there's oftentimes it has a flavor of like gangs. It's basically crews or cliques. Uh, Again, not the term you're looking for. In red, I decided to put this term in here because a lot of people know the word gumi, right? But gumi is not clan. Gumi is a crew of people, an association of people, a set of people. Again, it's not the term that you're looking for. The next one, batsu, this term refers to a faction or an association. Right? It's the root of the word zaibatsu, which refers to a financial conglomerate or some kind of industry clique, industrial faction. Right? It's also not the word you're looking for. So all of these words above, the two in white and then the one that I added at the last minute in red, they're not kinship terms. They're actually terms that mean crew or gang or group of people, but sometimes they are loosely translated as clan as well, which is not accurate. Okay, so wait. If the terms that are most commonly translated as clan are actually kinship terms, which for the record, let's be honest here, from an anthropological perspective, the English word clan does mean genealogy, the same thing that these kanji actually mean. It means bloodline in kinship terms. The problem isn't that clan doesn't mean bloodline or kinship. That actually is correct. The problem is that when people say the word samurai clan, they're thinking of something that is not really even the correct English word for clan. They're thinking of something that doesn't really, should not be using the word clan when they say the word clan. So that's the problem. The thing that most people are actually thinking of when they say samurai clan, the only thing that really comes close to that is a term that is usually translated as domain. So now you see the kanji on the screen, and this term is usually translated as domain or the province or the fief or something along those lines. But it can be translated as and properly conceived of as clan in the way that most people actually think when they think of the word samurai clan. Now, while this term actually refers to a specific plot of land, so it refers to a specific plot of land run by a lord and the lord's family, and he has retainers working for him, right? So, for example, you can say the Satsuma domain, but you can equally say the Satsuma clan. And this works for all those domains, especially during the Edo period. So when most people think of a samurai clan and they think of all these warriors from different backgrounds or different families sort of all gathered together under a lord to be the samurai clan, this is actually the closest thing in reality that matches that concept. So when the average modern day person has an amorphous, very generic idea of the samurai clan as a bunch of different people from different family backgrounds, a bunch of warriors from different family backgrounds, all gathered together under their lord, ready to go to war, etc. And they're like, that's a samurai clan. Okay, that the only term that's translated as clan that comes remotely close to that idea would be this one, the domain. It's the one that hits closest. But, all right, so in a way, we've kind of identified the one term that actually is sort of close to that. But now we need to take a minute, but we're actually we're not just gonna stop there. We're actually going to analyze this further and correct things. So in order to do that, we need to look at some other terms. So when you use other terms such as, you see on the screen, so when you're referring to the kinship between it, and just you can pronounce that as uji for simplicity's sake. So when you're referring to the kinship between that refers to the kinship between individuals. So two people may be of the same clan, and we're using clan in quotations, the same bloodline, the same kinship line, but fighting each other. But they may be fighting each other on opposite sides of a battle because they serve in different domains. So now look at the red arrows. This is important because I'm introducing another term. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. So this is ka, the family, the house. And this is actually the term, when I'm translating in online or in some books, I usually try to say the house of so-and-so or the house of such and such, because clan's too generic, but house hits to this kanji, which gets more precise. This is also a kinship term. However, it specifically refers to the political and the socio-economic relationships between the family members, between the main line of the family and the branch lines of the family. So the house is like a family business where your position in the business is tied to your position in the family. So the main line, the main branch of the family controls the house. And then there are branch families that are subservient to the main line. And where you're born, where you exist in the family determines your place in the pecking order within the house. This is one of the key things that this is the power structure of the family, of the samurai family. Okay, so now that hopefully you have a better idea of what the terms are actually referring to, you can see that the word that is most commonly translated as clan, the things that most often people just generically translate as clan, are actually one of three things. It's either a kinship term that's being translated as generically as clan, it's either the domain, which is generically translated as clan, or it's the family, which is generically translated as clan. But really it's, kinship, bloodline, domain, and family. So kinship term, that refers again to bloodline, to kinship, to descendancy of bloodlines and kinship lines. Domain, of course, refers to the employment or assignment placements. And family, as we just discussed, ka, refers to the organization of the main line and the branch lines. And it's very similar to a business. You can almost imagine the main office and then like satellite offices, the main line and the branch lines. All right, so when you say samurai clan, you really need to make sure you're referring to one of the above three on the screen, either a kinship term, the domain, or the family, because that's all it can possibly be. All right. And you may say, well, wait, what about all the retainers and the ashigaru and the servants and stuff? So that is the next question. Are the retainers part of a clan? Well, in the kinship terms, no, they're not. And so this may shock some people, but the retainers are not actually part of the clan. The retainers are they're hired help. To be blunt, the family members hire retainers. So retainers are hired help. They're employees. They're private contractors hired to do a job. So the retainer exists within a lord and retainer relationship. So the lord retainer relationship may be multi-generational, and it may be a very deep and a very tightly bound relationship. But the relationship is not a kinship relationship. It's a lord and retainer relationship. However, if marriages or adoptions take place, then the relationship obviously will change because the retainers have now become kin. And that means they become part of the clan. They become part of the house. They become part of the family. But unless they are kinfolk to the Lord, they're not part of the clan. They are hired servants. Now, again, this becomes a little convoluted because of we are actually dealing with different terms in Japanese, but they all loosely just get called clan or family or domain, in English. Generally just clan, but we're trying to show how they actually mean different things. So there is now, this is all, so everything I just said about the retainers not being part of the clan, that's when clan is being used for the kinship the kinship terms. Okay, but when we discuss the domain, so when you say clan, you actually mean the domain. In that case, then yes, the retainers are part of the clan because the retainers are part of the domain. The retainers are part of the domain's forces, so they are part of the clan, right? Especially within the Edo period mindset, where the country belongs to the emperor and then it's governed by the shogun, and the shogun then assigns a lord to a domain, then that lord hires retainers to fill the positions in the domain, is very similar to, think about modern day government offices, right? So the director is like the daimyo, and all of the employees are the retainers, right? The CEO would be the shogun, and then the owner would be the emperor, right? Even though technically the Tokugawa pretty much had a stranglehold on the imperial house in the Edo period. So the emperor at the time was really only the owner on paper. He had no real power at the time. The northern house emperor. Again, remember, the northern emperor was the one that the Tokugawa had a stranglehold on. So, but the Edo period domain or clan in that sense is basically like government offices, right? You have government positions that get filled. So everybody is considered on payroll. So then you may be tempted to try to get out of this somehow and say, well, what about pre-Edo? But honestly, whether it's pre-Edo or Edo, the rules for kinship, clan as being kinship, it's the same. It doesn't change. It always, throughout all of samurai history, it refers to the kinship. And for the domain aspect, that will shift around just a little bit, but for the most part, even though it may not be conceptualized with that exact term and those same Edo rules, but conceptually it's still roughly the same. Pretty much through any time period, the concept is whether, how much is true in actuality is of course debatable, but conceptually the emperor owns the country, the central government breaks the country into many provinces, each province is given a manager, each manager has to have sub-managers, and the sub-managers have to hire local people to fill positions, and we touched on this in the country samurai video. You can check that out if you want more about that breakdown. Again, not exactly the same as the Edo period, still very similar though. So in that context, you would still have the province. It may not be the same rules exactly as the Edo period, but it's still the province. It's still a similar setup. During the Sengoku period, it is shaken up a little bit. The daimyo do take territories that they don't have any authority to. The central government's busted at the time, so they're just doing what they want to do. But still, at the time period, the retainers of those daimyo are still not considered part of the clan. They're part of the domain, but they're not part of the clan because again, clan is a kinship term. And those retainers and those ashigaru and those conscripted soldiers are all still hired help. They're part of that clan's forces. They are the clan is like a private family that pulls cash out of its pocket and hires private army. Okay? They're not part of the family, they're the army that the family owns. So, but since since the retainers usually go along with their masters, right? Their bosses, their presence is assumed, and so many times incorrectly, people will just say something like Oda clan to refer to the Oda family and all their retainers, but this is not really correct. So as I said, when you say Oda clan, you're technically referring to the Oda family members, the kinfolk of the Oda and their kin, right? You technically really need to say the Oda clan's retainers, or Oda clan's army, or Oda clan's forces, when you want to refer to the retainers and the soldiers and the Ashigaru, etc., etc., etc. All right. So, for example, the Nojiri clan served the Oda clan as retainers, but the Nojiri clan, the Nojiri, are not part of the Oda clan. Only Oda family members are part of the Oda clan. The Nojiri were part of the Oda clan's retainers, or Oda clan's forces, but again, not part of the Oda clan, because the Nojiri are not kinship, bloodline, marriage, adoption, etc. They're not linked to the Oda, so therefore not part of the Oda clan. Later, same thing with the Fukushima. The Nojiri clan as a retainer to the Fukushima clan. The Nojiri clan serve the Fukushima clan, but the Nojiri clan are not part of the Fukushima clan because they're not related by blood or kinship or adoption or marriage or anything like that. However, the Nojiri clan is part of the Kumazawa clan because the house of Kumazawa contains the Nojiri, right? So it's a kinship relationship. There's marriages, adoptions, kinship there. So the Nojiri and the Kumazawa are the same clan. Hopefully this is making sense. And so to break that down, because Nojiri are Tada Genji descendants, because the Nojiri are part of the Tada Genji kinship line, then we say the Nojiri clan, or you could say the Nojiri clan, or you could say the house of Nojiri, the Nojiri bloodline, the house of Nojiri, etc., etc. But generically, we use the word clan. The Nojiri clan is part of the Tada Genji clan. Does that make sense? Because clan either refers to something related to kinship and bloodline, or it refers to the governing body of a region. But again, like I said, the term, the kanji, these two different things, right? And the kinship, bloodline, or the clan, these are two very different things. So this is why it can get very confusing. And again, neither of these terms really matches that stereotypical concept people have of samurai clan. So the stereotypical concept that people have of the samurai clan is the misconception. It's not accurate, it's wrong, it's inaccurate, okay? But to be fair, and most people, to be fair, the governing body of the domain is closer to that. But still, when most people say samurai clan, what they're thinking of is a clan's army, a clan's military force. But people have to remember that the army, the retainers and the Ashigaru, that is a private army owned by the family. So when you say like the Takeda clan, and then the Takeda clan, which is a bloodline, it's a group of people that are kin, they then own their own private army made up of retainers and foot soldiers. So you making that distinction between what is the clan, which is the bloodline, the family, versus the army that is their own private army. Right? That's the distinction. Okay, so the English term samurai clan, what it invokes in people's mind is this amorphous, generalized misconception of the actual terms that when something is translated as clan is a kinship term, or it means the province or the domain. It's a government term. So the government term is the only one that's close to what most people misconceive of as samurai clan. And so for that, we're on the screen. You'll see in the white circle would be the clan or the domain, and then within there you would have the lord and the lord's family, and that would be a kinship clan. And then in blue, the lord's retainers and the family of the retainers, and that would be a collection of clans, because the retainers themselves have their own genealogy, their own bloodlines, so they would have their own clan membership. And then the green is like Ashigaru and various other things, Ronin, etc., etc., etc. But what I want you to see here is you can consider them all part of a clan if you're using the clan definition that is actually domain, or you can see how they are not related to each other. They're not part of the same clan if you're using the genealogy term. So hopefully this clarifies it visually. Okay, so now to end the video, let's talk. I said we would go over one more misconception, and that is that if samurai have the same last name, that they must be part of the same clan, or they must be part of the same family. They must know each other and be related to each other. You know, if one guy's named Takeda and the other guy's named Takeda, they must be related to Takeda Shingen, right? Because they're all Takedas, and that's just not true. So hopefully on the screen, I want you to look at the screen and read what you see on the screen. And you'll see that you can have one main bloodline, a clan like the Genji clan, and then that from that clan, say that's the Tada Genji, right? And then they spawn 3 families, right? And these families, one of the families may have Tada as their name, one of them may have Baba, one of them may have something else, right? They get different names, and they form their houses, and each one of those house has a main line, and branch families, brothers, cousins, etc., etc., but they're all subservient to the main line. Right? It's not only a kinship relationship, but it's a social economic relationship. The branch families are controlled by the main line. But what happens sometimes is that for various reasons, one of those branches may rip away and go to a different province and get hired by a different lord and start a main house line of a new family in that province. Sometimes they change their name, sometimes they keep their name. And then, so this is how, for example, you can get, Takeda in this province and Takeda in that province, and while they are all part of the same clan in terms of, yes, they may all come from the same clan that Takeda Shingen came from, that last name Takeda, the original clan with its bloodline and genealogy, they are not that they very well may not be at all from the same house. And not being from the same house, they may be very just distant from one another, to the point where they share the same genealogy, but ever since the main branch and their branch split, and so two main branches evolved. Ever since then, they've not interacted with each other at all. They may have even fought against each other at some point. So, but this is important to understand, because this is if you're going to understand quote unquote a samurai clan, you have to understand again really that we're talking about families, bloodlines and families, and how the social, economic, and the power dynamics exist among them. So misconception number 1 is not understanding that samurai clan refers specifically to kinship. And misconception number 2 is that, if samurai have the same last name, they must be related. They must hang out. They must go to family reunions together or something, right? And the answer is no, because even though they do have the same clan in terms of being of the same genealogy, they may be from 2 different houses that haven't interacted with each other for generations.